Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
I was wondering if you would talk about feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. In the direct realization traditions, overwhelm is actually a teaching strategy. What is being overwhelmed is our fixed concepts about things, our habitual patterns, our defenses. And one of the ways of overwhelming those things is to create a feeling circumstance in someone that they just can't continue to keep coping with their usual coping mechanisms, the usual arguments, the usual reactivities, the usual ideas about things. And that can come about just from being in long teachings and being tired, or it can come about by hearing things that just kind of like, feel kind of overwhelming. Being in a transmission situation can be overwhelming at times, but that kind of overwhelm, while it can be something that we normally think of as uncomfortable or wrong, if it's in the right circumstance, it's being used in the right way, it will lead to relaxation. It will lead to just the attitude that we actually want to have when we're being in life, which is receptivity, porousness, a sort of an improvisational way of being in the world without a lot of preconceptions. There's another kind of overwhelm that we aren't ready for or we can't digest. And when we are experiencing that kind of overwhelm, then we have a feeling of unhealthy exhaustion, where we just feel like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and we get kind of hysterical when we've used too much energy and we really need to just stop. So it's a good thing to learn to be sensitive to when overwhelm is actually helping you and when it's not, when you're being digested by it. And of course, that can happen in lots of different circumstances. I really loved the kind of overwhelm that I experienced with some of my teachers, where you're just hearing things that are just kind of like big bulldozers, bulldozing away a bunch of crap that's been there forever. That feeling of combination of excitement and being a little in over your head and not quite understanding what's happening, but your heart is just telling you, wow, this is what I really need to hear. This is what my heart's been longing to hear for so long. So I always enjoyed that. But some people have a different kind of a constitution. If your constitution's more windy, if you have more of a Vata constitution, then that experience of overwhelm, which might be pleasurable / thrilling / a little scary / tiring, but great to someone else, is going to just be overwhelming in a not pleasant way, not helpful way for you. So I had this experience once when I was a younger teacher. My teachers staged very long retreats, and there would definitely be freakouts during those retreats because people just got so tired. And when I first started teaching on my own, that was the model that I had, these very long retreats where you taught people a zillion different things. And so there was one young woman who came to one of the earliest Trika Foundation's teachings. I just crammed way too much in it. And there was one young woman there who had a very Vata constitution. And by the time we got to some certain point in the teaching, she just started sobbing hysterically and ran out. And I never spoke to her, saw her again. I mean, I wasn't not talking to her, but she never talked to me again. So that is an example of an inept young teacher who didn't see what condition somebody was in, but a situation that might have been handled better by someone else and not by everyone in every condition. When we're feeling overwhelmed like we are perhaps right now, which is sort of coming at us from all directions, and there's lots of different layers to it, then we have to take some basic steps to build up our immunity and make sure we get enough rest, and that we're eating healthy food, and that we're having loving contacts with people as much as possible, and doing everything we possibly can to have some routine. All of these things are really necessary in this kind of global circumstance where the literal energy that's impinging on everyone is hard for almost everyone to digest all of the time. So it's really imperative in this situation to take very, very good care of ourselves as much as we possibly can, and not be doing stuff like eating frozen pizzas. Try to cook for yourself as much as possible, and definitely get enough sleep is the bottom line. Don't think that you're going to power through this. The only way that you can power through anything is if you have enough power. Turns out. I'm just an old fuddy-duddy now who says turns out.
Turns out.
Turns out. Don't feel like you have to be able to handle everything either. In our Titan culture, we take it as some badge of courage or badge of superiority or badge of invulnerability that we can handle everything. Well, we can't actually handle everything. Powering through is not the solution to everything. Sometimes duck is the solution. I learned that from a very wise person. Ducking. It's a great strategy. It's very akin to another strategy that I learned from a friend, Lu Ming, a Taoist teacher, which is don't fight the tigers. If you're walking on a path and tigers are playing ahead of you, you don't walk right in the middle of the tigers. You try to sneak around without being noticed by the tigers. The same with certain kinds of circumstances. It's the same idea as duck. We don't have to take everything on. We don't have to be capable of handling everything. Our self-image is not at stake if we rest appropriately and if we avoid difficult situations. I so often hear this really Americanized version of spiritual life, which says something like, if something's hard, I have to do it. Right? Or so often people say to me, I'm afraid of that, so I guess that means I should go toward it. Or that really freaks me out, so I guess I should go into it. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes it is, but not always. When I was still much more of a Titan than I am now, I had a dream where there was a conference of magicians, witches and warlocks and magicians. Somebody came up to me and said, don't go over there because there's all these wizards and they're all sparring with each other and it's dangerous. And in the dream, I just immediately went there. Right? This is a very Titan response. Dangerous? I must be able to prove I can handle it. So I went over there and I got in this mind contest with some wizard guy. In the dream, I literally felt him pulling my mind out of my head. And then I just pulled it back and woke myself up as quickly as I possibly could. So, if you're not a wizard, don't go play with wizards. That's not a good idea. If people are in situations are too much for you, just let it be too much. You don't have to prove anything just by making things more difficult than they need to be. Things are difficult enough. Believe me, trouble will find you, whether you run toward it or not.
Is that always a Titan tendency?
One of two ways is Titany. feeling that you have to be able to handle everything and demonstrate that nothing can overpower you. The other way is if you feel underpowered and you're afraid to compete, then you will just criticize other people for the way they're engaging in something. You can even get into a thing where you criticize the competitiveness of other people. That's like your form of competition, right? That's what I call a secret Titan. Titans who are actually afraid to compete, but they kind of sit back on the bench and criticize everybody else. So those two different ways. There are certain things that aren't worth fighting about or fighting for or getting in the middle of. It's just not worth it. It'll just get you all entangled, or you're just too tired, or you just don't have the oomph to deal with it. Those are all matters of discernment, but it also means that we have to locate our real desire. It's almost like a form of FOMO, like fear of missing out on the struggle. Special form of Titan FOMO. I can't even tell you how many times somebody will write something on Facebook and I'll think of something smart and slightly aggressive to say back. And I'll start to type it and then I'll just delete it. You know, it's like, just don't even go there, Shambhavi, is what I say to myself. You don't really need to do that. But there's something, you know, invigorating about getting into a little bit of a spar with somebody, little sparring thing, right? But that isn't really the way. That's a waste of energy. Very much a waste of energy. So I'm still training myself out of that. Still have my training wheels on.
What are some good questions to ask ourselves for us to be clear about our limits? Because some of us might think that we've, read enough Harry Potter to think that we might have some wizarding tendencies.
Yeah. Is there anything here that will really benefit my practice? Is this in line with the view? Am I just reenacting old patterns, or is there actually something of value here? Am I just taking my struggle out for a walk? Am I just taking my fight game out for a walk? Is there actually anything of value here for me? It's very easy to tell when we're just doing that thing, I find, at least at this stage. I'm sure it's harder when you haven't been practicing so long, but there's a certain kind of chugging little engine of, at least for Titan stuff. I'm just talking about Titans. It's like chugging engine of anticipation of the fight. And you can feel it happening. And you can stop it. If that's what your motivation is, just stop. I ask myself, is this really what Ma wants from me? That's what I ask. And then I'm like, oh, I know immediately. If I even have to ask, the answer is no. Right? She's my be-all and end-all, final arbiter of everything. And then there's just getting into useless things with people who are in their own loop of fixation, right? You're either trying to get something out of them that they really don't have to give, or you're trying to fix something in them that isn't fixable by you. Those are also things that people get into, putting energy into struggles with other people that just keep going around and around and around and around and around. At some point, you just have to decide, this isn't working, right? But in general, when we're in those situations, if we stay in them, we want something out of that situation that is not happening. And we just keep trying, even though it's not happening. Or we have a view of ourselves, and this is Titan also, like one who can solve all problems and fix everything and fix everyone and make it all better for everyone. And sometimes we just have to admit defeat. That's definitely a lesson one learns being a spiritual teacher. Each teacher is not a teacher for everyone. Maybe Ma was, but not us little people down here on the ground. These are things we have to learn, like when we aren't the right person to transform a situation. It's not ours to transform. And it's hard if we then also feel a sense of failure and have other stuff going on. It's hard to just cut the tie or cut the rope when we're in a situation that is not really ours to be in.